TrueStory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
TrueStory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Zoe Carter's world fractured at precisely 2:47 a.m. The rain fell in relentless sheets against the windshield of her old Honda Civic as she lurched through the deserted streets of Chicago's South Side. Lightning split the sky in jagged arcs, briefly illuminating the dashboard's cracked plastic lines like a skeletal map of every mistake she'd ever made. In the back seat, wrapped in a pastel pink blanket far too thin for a November night, lay Lily, her 2.5-year-old daughter, her frail body shaking uncontrollably as fever racked her tiny frame. Zoe's breath hitched when Lily's lips parted in a tiny moan. Zoe's chest constricted at the sound, as if each syllable were a needle pressing into her heart. "Mommy," Lily whispered, voice thick with panic. Zoe's chest constricted at the sound, as if each syllable were a needle pressing into her heart. "Hang on, sweetheart," Zoe managed, her voice a low tremor. She reached back as best she could in the cramped space, brushing damp strands of hair from Lily's forehead. The child's skin was burning. Zoe could feel it through the thin fleece pajamas. "Just a little more, baby," she kept repeating, though she wasn't sure it was true. At the next intersection, the traffic light hung dead. They were the only car on the street. Zoe hesitated for a split second as it flickered from red to green, heart pounding. She pressed the accelerator, tires hissing on slick asphalt, barely registering the spray of water that arced past the passenger window. Her mind felt fogged with fear and fatigue. She'd been awake since before dawn the night before, caring for Lily through another bout of coughs and chills. But never so suddenly frantic. Never so utterly alone. She searched for her phone in the cup holder, thumbs swiping frantically. Ethan, Lily's father and Zoe's estranged husband, must be on a business trip, or at least that was his excuse every time Lily spiked a fever. She tapped his name, willing him to pick up. "Ethan, please," she didn't even finish before his voicemail box clicked on. "Hi, you've reached Ethan Wallace. I'm probably at a client dinner or out of town. Leave a message." She slammed the phone back into its cradle, tears stirring at the corners of her eyes. Elmwood's emergency entrance appeared ahead. A revolving door of fluorescent light and tattered umbrellas. Fire engine red signage. Zoe skidded into the drop-off zone, breathless, heart hammering so loud she feared it might wake Lily if it stopped. She yanked open Lily's car seat harness and unstrapped her with shaking hands, fumbling for the hospital bag, diapers, wipes. An extra sweater she'd thrown together at 1 a.m. when Lily's fever first rose. Zoe carried Lily into the vestibule, her inability to hurry overriding any sense of decorum. A security guard, bundled in a windbreaker too thin for November, raised an eyebrow as Zoe nearly knocked over a stack of patient intake forms. "Mommy, my head hurts," Lily whimpered, curling into her mother's arms. "Sure, baby," Zoe cooed, pushing through glass doors into the warm, sterile air. The antiseptic smell was a harsh relief after the damp chill outside. She spotted the triage desk and hurried forward, Zoe's boots squelching on the tiled floor. A tired nurse glanced up from her computer, eyebrows knitting together when she saw Lily's flushed face. "Name?" the nurse asked, reaching for a thermometer. "Zoe Carter. My daughter. She's burning up, won't stop shivering or screaming." "Please, she's co." Zoe cut off, dislodging a queasy breath. "We'll get you back right away," the nurse said, offering a frazzled but firm hand to take Lily. "You can sit right there." She gestured to a nearby bench. Zoe sank down, clutching her hospital bag. Eyes locked on Lily as the nurse wheeled her away. Each turn of the corner felt like a mile, and Zoe's chest tightened. She pressed her palms to her face, willing herself not to break down. "Not here. Not now." Behind her, the nurse called out for a doctor. A young resident in scrubs appeared, stethoscope slung around her neck, eyes bright with fatigue and concern. Zoe stood to follow but was gently held back by the intake nurse. "Take a seat. We'll call you in as soon as they have a room." Zoe sat, shoulders trembling. The hospital waiting area was dimly lit, only a single strip of flickering lights overhead. The clock's hands inched forward with agonizing slowness. She looked down at her phone. 2:53 a.m. 6 minutes since she'd driven in. 6 minutes since she'd surrendered Lily to the hospital staff. She tapped Ethan's voicemail again, willing him to answer. Nothing. She thought of calling her mother, but memories of their last argument stopped her. Her mother had accused her of blowing everything up, of being too sensitive, too emotional. Not understanding that being a mother wasn't a role one could simply pack up and abandon when it got hard. So Zoe sat in the cold waiting area, hands folded tightly in her lap, focusing on each breath, willing her panic not to rise. After what felt like an eternity, the resident nurse came back. Zoe leapt to her feet. "Ms. Carter? We have some preliminary labs back. Nothing definitive yet, but her white blood cell count is elevated. The X-ray shows possible fluid in her lungs. We're starting antibiotics and keeping her on oxygen. It's too early to say if it's bacterial or viral." Zoe's chest heaved. "Will she be okay?" The nurse hesitated, her eyes meeting Zoe's. "We're doing everything we can. Just stay here. You can sit with her soon." Zoe exhaled, stumbling back into the hallway. She wrapped her arms around herself. The hospital gown's thin fabric offering no comfort, but somewhere underneath the raw terror, a flicker of something else. As thunder rumbled overhead, Zoe planted her feet on the linoleum floor. In the clinic's stark lighting, with only the distant hiss of ventilators for company, she made a silent vow. She would not let Lily go. Not now, not tonight, not ever. And if she had to stand alone against the storm, both outside and within, then she would. Because when motherhood demanded everything of her, Zoe Carter would give every ounce of her strength to bring her daughter safely back into the light. The memory of that harrowing night in Elmwood Medical Center haunted Zoe Carter long after Lily's fever finally broke. But the real fracture in her life had begun months earlier, long before the rain-slicked streets and frantic dash to the ER. It happened in the small moments, the sideways glances, the silence at the dinner table, the unspoken tension between the empty chairs. 2 months prior, on a crisp September evening, Zoe and Ethan Wallace had stepped onto the rooftop terrace of his tech startup's new headquarters in the West Loop. The city skyline gleamed, the Willis Tower's spire piercing the indigo sky, the L train rattling past blocks below, the river shimmering under streetlights like liquid silver. Investors, colleagues, and friends raised champagne glasses, toasting Ethan's promotion to Director of Business Development. Zoe had stood beside him in a fitted navy sheath dress, her dark hair pulled into a sleek low bun, smiling for every camera and congratulatory handshake. In that moment, she felt pride in Lily's father, pride in the life they'd built. Their daughter's laughter still echoed in her ears, a soundtrack to late-night feedings and diaper changes. Despite the exhaustion, Zoe had believed their partnership was unbreakable, that they'd face parenthood side by side. But as Ethan accepted accolade after accolade, his arm around Zoe, she noticed how he lingered too long on other faces lit with admiration as much for him as for the company he represented. And when a young VP approached, calling him legendary, Zoe felt the first pang of unease when Ethan's smile turned a shade too bright and his gaze flickered away from hers. After the ceremony, they slipped away to a quieter corner of the terrace. A lone heater hissed in the chill air, and a violinist in the far corner played an elegiac melody. Ethan turned to Zoe, offering a half-smile. "You looked amazing tonight," he said, voice hushed. He brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. "I couldn't have done this without you." Zoe's heart warmed. "We did this together. You know that." He nodded, eyes distant. "I know. It's just been so complicated lately." She tilted her head. "Complicated how?" Ethan's jaw tensed. He stared out at the horizon, as if the city lights held the answer. Ever since Lily was born, I feel like I'm drowning in responsibilities. This role, it's demanding more time, more energy. And sometimes, he paused, swallowing. Sometimes I feel we're in different worlds now. Zoe's stomach fluttered. We promised to face it together. We're partners. He exhaled, looking at her with unfamiliar distance. I never wanted this to happen, but if I don't, someone else will. The words landed in her chest like broken glass. She searched his face, the man she'd married, the father of her child, but found only a flicker of resolve shadowed by regret. She forced a smile, wrapping an arm around him. We'll find a way. We always do. Yet in the weeks that followed, Ethan slipped further away. He returned home late, mentioning urgent meetings. His phone never left his side when it buzzed quietly at the dinner table. Zoe watched him check it with a furtive tension. If the ringtone was unfamiliar, he'd pocket the call. If it was a client, he'd make excuses. Can't talk now, dinner's on. But Zoe's heart sank each time, the silence between them growing thicker. Morning routines became a battleground of exhaustion and resentment. Zoe would rouse Lily from her crib, carry her into the kitchen, and start breakfast. Oatmeal topped with blueberries, scrambled eggs, milk warmed in a sippy cup. By the time Ethan stumbled in for coffee, bleary-eyed, Zoe had already changed diapers and dropped Lily off at daycare. He took the mug, thankless, and left without a word. One Wednesday, after Lily's daycare pickup, Zoe texted Ethan. Could you do bedtime tonight?
I've got a meeting I can't miss.
She didn't hear back. At 8:15 p.m., she FaceTimed the nursery. Lily sat in her crib, tear-streaked face bobbing as she reached for the screen. Zoe's heart sank. She tried calling again, voicemail. At 9:30 p.m., back at the office, Zoe finally texted, Please call me. Hours passed. At midnight, a single reply, Sorry.
Can't.
I'm buried in work. Zoe stared at her phone. Work. Always work. She felt Lily stir in her dreams, tiny fists clenching. Zoe imagined her daughter waking alone, afraid in a crib she couldn't climb out of. The image stabbed her gut. Sleep evaporated. One Friday, after a grueling week of balancing client calls, spreadsheet audits, and endless supply runs for Lily's daycare, Zoe arrived home to find the front door ajar. Her heart froze. Inside, the apartment was quiet, too quiet. She called Ethan's name, stepping over her pumps, dropping her tote. In the living room, she found traces, an unfamiliar scarf draped over the couch, 2 wine glasses in the sink, one washed, one still drying at the edge of the rack. On the coffee table lay a lipstick-stained envelope. Zoe's pulse thundered as she slipped it open. Can't stop thinking about you. Meet me tomorrow morning.
8 Uhr morgens.
See. Her breath caught.
See.
Caroline?
Camille?
Zoe backed away, hand clamped to her mouth. Her world narrowed to that single letter. Camille was Jace's assistant, an elegantly ruthless woman always hovering near Ethan at networking events. Zoe's chest tightened in a knot of betrayal and sorrow. She slid the envelope into her pocket and fled to the bedroom, closing and locking the door. There, under the harsh glow of the bedside lamp, Zoe felt something shatter and sink in her chest. The promises, the partnership, the family, they'd all been illusions. She sank onto the bed, hand trembling over her stomach, where Lily's kicks had already begun that afternoon. She placed a palm over the secret flutter of life inside her, her daughter, and whispered into the darkness, I will protect you, no matter what. The next morning, Zoe swallowed down her panic and marched into Ethan's office building in the Loop. She rode the elevator to the 13th floor, phone in hand, ready to confront him. But as she stepped into his opulent corner office, she found Camille standing by the window, sipping coffee. She turned as Zoe entered. Miss Carter, she said, voice smooth as silk. I was wondering when you'd show up. Zoe's chest stung. She forced a calm smile. Ethan, can we talk? He appeared from behind his desk, tie loosened, eyes guarded. Zoe.
I.
She cut him off.
Producing the envelope.
Care to explain this? Ethan's face went ashen. He reached for Camille, who stepped back. Zoe, it's not what you think. Camille lifted a poised eyebrow. Oh, Zoe. He's just been attentive while you've been so occupied. She placed a hand on Ethan's arm. You should focus on being here for him, Ethan. He deserves you. Her words dripped with condescension. Zoe's throat tightened with rage. She clenched the envelope. My daughter deserves both parents. But you deserve to lose everything you have if you can't honor that. In that moment, Zoe realized the marriage she believed in was dead. Her husband's ambition had eclipsed any vows he once held dear. She whirled on her heel and left Ethan's office. The slap of her heels echoing in the marble foyer as she descended the elevator, heart pounding. When she got outside into the crisp autumn air, she phoned Harper. We need to talk.
Now.
By that evening, Zoe had moved Lily's clothes out of their shared closet. She packed her daughter's toys into a duffel bag. She drafted emails to her firm contacts and to a small accounting network Harper had recommended. On her bedroom wall, she tore down wedding photos, leaving behind one framed shot of Lily's first birthday, an image of pure joy. Ethan left a voicemail that night, apologizing, promising we'll figure this out. Zoe listened, phone pressed to her ear like a lifeline, until she heard Lily's distant coo. She didn't answer. Instead, she steadied herself and slipped under Lily's blanket, turning on a pink nightlight. The next morning, Zoe would keep one promise. She would protect her daughter. The rest, Ethan's hollow vows, the glittering skyline, the facades of success, were already behind her, crumbling under the weight of shattered trust. And though the future was uncertain, one thing was clear. Zoe Carter would find her way forward, no longer tethered by promises that were never meant to last. Zoe Carter closed the door of her Lincoln Park condo behind her and leaned against it, phone pressed to her ear. Harper, I'm on your couch. I'm so sorry, she whispered. The line clicked dead. A single cushion remained between her and the polished hardwood floor, yet it felt like miles of emptiness. She sank onto the couch and slid onto her side, knees drawn up, tears brimming as the apartment's silence pressed in. Minutes later, the door swung open. Harper Brooks, her college roommate turned steadfast friend, stepped in carrying 2 mugs of tea and a wool blanket. She set the blanket over Zoe's shoulders and handed her a mug. You look like you've been through a cyclone, Harper said gently. Zoe hugged the blanket, sipped. The chamomile was warm and sweet. He's with her, Zoe croaked. And Mom, she thinks I'm crazy. I can't do this alone anymore. Harper sat beside her, shoulder to shoulder. You don't have to. She took Zoe's hand. You have Lily. You have me. And you have talent, don't forget that. Within 48 hours, Zoe had moved in temporarily with Harper in a cozy Logan Square brownstone. Sunlight streamed through leaded glass windows into an open-plan living room filled with succulents and dog-eared design mags. A framed poster of their college road trip to the Badlands hung above a well-worn leather couch. It was imperfect, a little cramped, but it felt like home. Zoe spent her first morning there brewing coffee, watching Lily toddle around on a fluffy gray rug. She'd unpacked only one bag: baby clothes, favorite board books, a few changes of her own jeans and sweaters. Everything else, wedding photos, keepsakes, remained boxed in the alley behind her old condo until she could decide what belonged in her new life. Harper leaned against the kitchen island.
So,
let's talk work. She placed a sleek MacBook on the counter. I called the folks at North Star Accounting. They need someone part-time, flexible hours. I told them about you, your reputation, your precision. They got excited. Zoe cupped her coffee. The idea of returning to spreadsheets, tax forms, ledger reconciliations felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I haven't touched QuickBooks in 2 years.
I'm rusty.
Harper laughed. You're Zoe Carter. The spreadsheet whisper, you'll be fine. We'll do a weekend boot camp. That Saturday, they spread reference books, training guides, and a packet of notes on the dining table. Lily napped in a portable playpen, lulled by a mobile's tinkling melody. Harper guided Zoe through month-end close procedures and reconciliation routines. Zoe's fingers flew across the keyboard. Formulas clicked into place, and her confidence swelled as numbers balanced. By noon, Zoe leaned back, blinking at a clean balance sheet. "I did it." She sounded surprised, as if she'd conjured the work out of thin air. "You did," Harper replied, beaming. "Now, let's order lunch." Over tacos and avocado toast at a nearby cafe. Zoe watched other families, fathers feeding toddlers, mothers juggling groceries and high chairs. A pang of loneliness washed over her, but it was tempered by a spark of hope. She was reclaiming her identity, both as a mother and as a professional. Back at the brownstone, Zoe tucked Lily into bed around 7 p.m. with a soft lullaby. Harper appeared in the doorway. "You did great today," she said, brushing a loose strand of hair behind Zoe's ear. Zoe closed the door on Lily's room, leaned against it with a tired smile. "Thanks to you." Harper slipped an envelope into Zoe's hand. "It came this morning. A check from your old firm. You're unused 401k matching. Enough to float you a month or two."
Zoe's eyes stung.
"I forgot that was coming." She looked down at the check and then back at Harper. "You've done so much." Harper shrugged. "What are friends for?"
Now.
"Change out of that suit. Let's watch something mindless." That evening, they settled on the couch with popcorn, laughing at a sitcom about a single dad raising 3 kids. Zoe let herself laugh fully. Something she hadn't done in weeks. When the show ended, they lingered in comfortable silence. Zoe turned to Harper. "I've been so busy surviving, I forgot what it felt like just to breathe." Harper took her hand. "You're not just surviving, you're starting over. You deserve more than just surviving." In the days that followed, Zoe's new routine took shape. Drop off Lily at daycare. Toddlin, Town Early Learning Center. Work hours at North Star Accounting, with records and receipts neatly archived. Afternoon coffee breaks at Finch's Cafe on Kedzie. Pick up Lily. Dinner with Harper. Bedtime stories for Lily and late-night refamiliarization with professional development modules. One Thursday, Zoe stood by her window, watching the orange glow of street lamps reflect on puddles. Lily's giggle echoed from the next room. Zoe wrapped the wool throw tighter. For the first time in months, she felt the ground beneath her feet. She wasn't running anymore. She'd found firm ground, old friendships rekindled, a career reborn, and a path forward for her daughter and herself. Tomorrow, she'd face court to initiate custody proceedings. It terrified her, but she exhaled, remembering the line from Harper's favorite poem taped to her fridge. "She rises unstoppable from every storm." Zoe touched her palm to the glass and whispered, "I'm ready." In that moment, Logan Square wasn't just a neighborhood. It was her sanctuary, where broken dreams were mended, where she would rebuild her life, and where her daughter would learn to dance again in the rain. Zoe Carter perched on the stiff leather couch in Marcus Reed's downtown law office, her fingers drumming anxiously against the armrest. The room was spacious and bright, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River's gentle current. On the wall hung framed degrees and a large photograph of Marcus and his son Milo, smiling on the courthouse steps. Zoe glanced at her daughter's daycare drop-off photo taped to her notebook, then back to Marcus. She couldn't afford to flinch now. Marcus, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, gave her a reassuring nod. "All right, Zoe. We're going to move quickly. The first step is filing for emergency temporary custody. Lily's medical records, evidence of neglect, and proof of Ethan's infidelity will give us strong grounds." Zoe swallowed, heart pounding. "I want what's best for her. I don't know how to do this." "Then we'll do it together." Marcus opened a black binder. "Here are the documents we'll file today. Petition for temporary custody, detailing Ethan's absence during Lily's hospitalizations and his failure to provide care. Affidavit of neglect, supported by your own testimony and the hospital records from Elmwood Medical Center. Evidence of infidelity, Camille's text messages, photos from the rooftop launch party. And that envelope you found. Property ownership documentation, showing the Lincoln Park townhouse as your separate property prior to marriage, plus deeds and bank statements. Financial records, Lily's daycare invoices, your freelance income reports, Ethan's income statements, and joint bank account statements. I'll file these with the circuit court clerk by 5 p.m. Over the next 2 days, Zoe became a whirlwind of activity. She sat with Dr. Patel at Elmwood Medical Center, gathering official transcriptions of Lily's ER visits. The nurse who'd triaged Lily recalled Ethan's voicemail. No one from the family showed up. Zoe obtained a signed statement for the affidavit of neglect. She jogged to Ethan's building in the Loop to retrieve the rooftop party invitation from a mutual friend, confirming date and guest list. Harper Brooks accompanied her to the new divisional office, where Zoe discreetly snapped photos of Ethan and Camille laughing on the terrace, evidence of the affair to accompany the text messages. At the county recorder's office, Zoe discovered the deed for the Lincoln Park property. It was indeed in her maiden name, signed 6 months before her wedding. She photocopied the deed, banking the original safely. Back at Marcus's office, the binder grew thicker. Zoe watched him go through page after page, stamping each set of documents. We'll present the court all of this, plus your testimony. Lily's best interests come first legally and morally. That afternoon, Marcus and Zoe stood in the hushed corridors of Daly Center. The chaos of downtown streets murmured beyond the windows. A clerk stamped their filings, the red imprint burning the page. Filed, March 12, 2025. Next, we serve Ethan, Marcus said, handing Zoe a set of papers. It's called Service of Process. He has 21 days to respond. But for temporary custody, the judge may grant a hearing within 10 days. Zoe nodded, adrenaline surging. This was real, no going back. She steeled herself when Marcus motioned to a uniformed process server waiting in the hallway. As Ethan's ex-wife, she never imagined handing him legal papers as he sipped his morning espresso in the lobby. Zoe swallowed her nerves as the server approached Ethan and slipped the documents onto his clipboard mid-email. His mask of composure flickered, enough for Zoe to catch a glimpse before he strode off. 2 weeks later, Zoe sat in Marcus's conference room for her deposition. The opposing counsel, a sharp-eyed defense attorney named Victoria Snyder, peered at Zoe over horn-rimmed glasses. Ms. Carter, isn't it true you filed these charges out of spite after discovering my client's business obligations? She asked, voice silky. Zoe inhaled. She'd rehearsed this. No, Miss Snyder. I filed to protect my daughter from neglect, proven by his absence during her critical hospitalizations and psychological distress. I have hospital logs, witness statements, and his voicemail records. Victoria sifted through Zoe's binder of evidence. Your mother, Mrs. Carter, testified you're unstable, fond of dramatics, yes? She prodded. Zoe's throat closed. She retrieved a printed statement from her mother. My mother's testimony clarifies that she initially misunderstood, but now supports my fight for Lily's welfare. She slid it across the table. Victoria's surprised frown was a small victory. The deposition lasted 3 hours. Questions about Zoe's financial stability, her freelance clients, her living arrangements, and her mother's recollections. Zoe answered each calmly. When it was over, she stepped outside in the spring sunshine, lungs filling as though she'd been underwater. Marcus gave her a supportive look. 1 round down, 1 to go. On a brisk April morning, Zoe returned to the Daly Center for the temporary custody hearing. She wore a tailored gray skirt suit, Lily's daycare drop-off photo tucked discreetly in her coat pocket. Gathered in the courtroom were Ethan, suit perfectly pressed, Camille discreetly perched behind him, Gloria in a prim blazer. Marcus at her side. Judge Pennington, a silver-haired jurist known for fairness, called the case. Zoe rose, Marcus at her shoulder. Ms. Carter, your daughter's welfare has been established as urgent. I have read your medical records, employment documentation, and your deposition statements. Mr. Wallace, the judge turned to Ethan. Why did you not respond to hospital notifications when your child was critically ill? Ethan cleared his throat. Your Honor, I was on a business trip and I thought Ms. Carter had primary responsibility for Lily. I regret that she felt unsupported. Regret is not sufficient. Judge Pennington cut in. The law requires both parents to share responsibility. You have failed in your parental duties repeatedly. Miss Carter, do you have a specific temporary arrangement request? Zoe swallowed but spoke clearly. Your Honor, I request sole temporary physical custody, with Ethan granted supervised visitation at my discretion. I also request that he contribute to Lily's daycare and medical expenses pending formal division of assets. Marcus nodded at the judge's bench, then added details about Ethan's financial contributions and the joint account. The judge paused, reviewing notes, and Ms. Harper Brooks's testimony about Ms. Carter's professional gain. Judge Pennington continued, indicates stable income to support the child. Finally, the judge spoke. Given the documented neglect, the absence of Mr. Wallace during critical medical episodes, and Ms. Carter's demonstration of a stable environment, I grant Ms. Carter temporary sole physical custody of Lily. Mr. Wallace, you will have supervised visitation every other weekend, subject to Ms. Carter's schedule. Child support payments will be set at 25% of your net income. A final custody hearing is scheduled in 90 days. Court is adjourned. A gavel banged. Relief and triumph surged through Zoe. She sank into her seat, tears pricking her eyes. Marcus offered her a hand, and she squeezed it. Across the room, Ethan stared at her with something like shock. Camille's face ashen. In the days after the custody decision, Zoe and Marcus turned to the division of marital assets. At a mediation session in Marcus's conference room, the air was thick with tension. Ethan, Marcus began calmly, the townhouse deed clearly shows Miss Carter's sole ownership prior to the marriage. Therefore, it remains her separate property. Ethan's brow furrowed. I contributed significant renovations. I deserve compensation. Zoe closed her eyes. Ethan, you refused to protect Lily when she was sick and abandoned me. Renovations mean nothing if you don't honor your responsibilities as a father and husband. Marcus presented contractor invoices and bank statements. Renovation expenses were drawn from the joint account after the townhouse was in Ms. Carter's name. Courts consider this joint property. Therefore, Ms. Carter retains title and Mr. Wallace may be reimbursed for authorized costs from the joint funds. Ethan's attorney reluctantly nodded. If that's the ruling, we will comply. Next, they addressed joint bank accounts. Marcus reviewed statements. This account, $120,000, will be split 50/50. Child support obligations take precedence, so Ethan's half, net $60,000, will be placed in a trust for Lily's medical and educational expenses. Gloria Harper, who had come as a spectator, interjected tears in her eyes. Ethan, think of your granddaughter before you challenge this. Ethan swallowed, his defenses visibly faltering. I understand. On the morning of July 15th, Zoe found herself in Judge Pennington's courtroom again, this time for the final hearing. The gallery was packed with reporters, friends, and family. Clients from North Star Accounting sat quietly in the back, and Harper Brooks took notes for Zoe. Judge Pennington outlined the progress since the temporary order. Lily was thriving. Zoe had stable housing and income. Marcus's supervised visits had gone smoothly, and Ethan had made all support payments on time, though reluctantly. Mr. Wallace, the judge said, do you wish to contest any aspect of the custody arrangement? Ethan rose, shoulders rigid. Your Honor, I accept the temporary rulings and wish to formalize joint legal custody while maintaining Ms. Carter's sole physical custody. I apologize for my past failures and pledge to be fully engaged as a parent going forward. Marcus exchanged a look with Zoe, who gave a small nod. Judge Pennington smiled thinly. Very well. Joint legal custody ensures both parents make decisions about Lily's welfare. Ms. Carter retains primary physical custody. Mr. Wallace may seek expanded visitation as his conduct demonstrates consistency. All marital assets will be divided as previously agreed. Child support and property settlement to be finalized within 30 days. The gavel struck. A hush fell. Zoe exhaled, relief so profound it felt like new air in her lungs. She glanced at Ethan, who offered a tentative, remorseful nod. Later that afternoon, Zoe sat with Lily on the terrace of Harper's brownstone. The Chicago skyline shimmered in the golden hour. Lily splashed in a kiddie pool, giggling. Zoe felt every contract clause, every affidavit, every deposition had been worth this moment. Marcus emerged with 2 smoothies. He handed one to Zoe.
"You earned this," he said.
Zoe smiled, hugging Lily close. "Thank you for everything." As the sun dipped behind the high-rises, Zoe realized the legal battle had not only secured Lily's future, but reclaimed her own power. The courtroom drama, the stack of paperwork, the confronting of betrayal, all of it had led here. A mother and daughter safe, their lives rebuilt on justice, truth, and unwavering love. And for Zoe Carter, that was the truest victory of all. The night air in downtown Chicago carried an electric buzz as guests gathered for the grand opening of Wallace Innovations' new Lakeshore headquarters. Floodlights illuminated the shimmering facade of glass and steel, while a red carpet led from the valet stand up to the entrance, where a live string quartet played Vivaldi's Spring. Media crews clustered along barricades, eager for celebrity cameos, startup investors, and the inevitable ribbon-cutting photo op with Ethan Wallace, the company's newly minted director of business development. Inside, the atrium soared 3 stories high, its polished marble floors reflecting the guests' tuxedos and cocktail dresses. Above, a crystalline chandelier scattered refracted light like constellations. Prototype display tables lined the perimeter, next-generation AR glasses, AI-driven logistics bots, and a sleek electric scooter emblazoned with the Wallace brand. Servers wove through the crowd, trays of champagne flutes and miniature crab cakes balanced expertly in gloved hands. Zoe Carter stood near the back, arms crossed over her tailored charcoal blazer. She'd arrived fashionably late, an intentional choice. Tonight, she was not Ethan's wife or a mere +1. She was a guest of honor as a successful accounting consultant recently retained for Wallace Innovations' expansion audit. Her heels clicked on the floor as she scanned for familiar faces. Harper Brooks chatting with Marcus Reed, whom Zoe spotted just inside the entrance. Lily was with a trusted sitter at home. Zoe had arranged for her to be cared for as quietly as possible so Zoe could attend unencumbered. Ethan emerged from a side door in a custom-cut tuxedo, navy bow tie, polished shoes matching his confident stride. Flashbulbs popped. He lifted a microphone and raised an arm, helming the attention of the entire room. "Thank you all for joining us," he began, voice resonant. "Tonight marks not only a milestone for Wallace Innovations, but a celebration of teamwork, perseverance, and the bold leap into tomorrow. Let's make history together." He smiled broadly, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling through the crowd. Zoe watched him deliver the speech with practiced poise. She recalled his absence during Lily's hospitalization, the countless evenings when she'd cradled their feverish daughter alone, hoping her phone would ring with his apologies. She felt the familiar ache of betrayal tighten her chest. But she inhaled steadily, reminding herself that tonight was about her own new beginning. As Ethan concluded, the crowd broke into polite applause. He brandished a ceremonial gold scissors and prepared to cut the ribbon. At that moment, Zoe slipped away, weaving between guests, her high heels a muted percussion against the marble. She found Marcus beside the logistics spot display. "I need you," she whispered, voice low. Marcus nodded, discreetly following her through the crowd. Zoe guided him to a glass-enclosed conference room overlooking the atrium. She closed the door softly behind them. Inside, the lights were dimmed. Only a spotlight illuminated a long table scattered with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. No one else was here. "This is it," Zoe said, drawing from her purse the manila folder containing her final piece of evidence. "If I don't do this now, I never will." Marcus took the folder, recognizing the company letterhead and the name of Wallace Investments. "The board minutes," he said quietly. "The ones showing Ethan's misuse of company funds?" She nodded. He's been redirecting R&D budgets into personal offshore accounts, Camille's consultancy shell company. It's all here. Zoe exhaled. I can't let him walk away with it all. He flipped through the pages. Transaction records, approvals signed in Ethan's handwriting at odd hours, bank transfers concealed beneath consulting fees. Tonight's launch is his grand distraction, Zoe continued. If we hand this over to the board, CFO, audit committee, the press release will follow. I want him exposed, not just as an absentee father, but as a fraud. Marcus closed the folder, resolve in his eyes. We need digital proof. Let me extract these files now. Then we'll transmit them securely to the audit committee. You go back out there. I'll handle the tech side. Zoe left the room without hesitation. She re-entered the atrium just as Ethan lifted his champagne glass for a toast to the unstoppable future. The crowd cheered, not knowing the storm gathering beyond the polished veneer. Moments later, Marcus reappeared at Zoe's elbow. He slipped her his phone.
Done.
Files sent to the audit committee's secure feed. They'll review by tomorrow morning. Expect an announcement within 48 hours. Zoe's heart pounded as she set the phone back into her clutch. She raised her own flute of champagne and followed the crowd's applause, staring straight at Ethan. For an instant, his eyes met hers. He tilted his head in polite acknowledgement. In his brief gaze, Zoe sensed confusion, a flicker of fear, like an animal sensing a trap. The quartet transitioned to a livelier tune. Zoe drifted to the edge of the circle around Ethan. A server approached with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. Zoe took a smoked salmon canopy, her mind racing with possibilities. Any moment now, the dam would burst. She heard footsteps behind her. Camille, sleek, poised, a vision in emerald, smiled coolly.
Zoe.
Congratulations on your consulting role. Remarkable to see you here. Zoe held her smile. Thank you. She met Camille's gaze, voice low. I'd congratulate Ethan for a successful evening, too. Camille's smile didn't falter, but her eyes sharpened. He's worked very hard. We're both committed to this company's vision. She glanced at Zoe's clutch. Busy night.
Very.
Zoe sipped her champagne. But all good things come to those who work for them. She moved past, leaving Camille with a faint flicker of uncertainty in her expression. In the center of the atrium, Ethan spotted Zoe approaching. He set down his microphone. Zoe, he began, but she cut him off. Congratulations, Ethan. That was a great speech. She turned, tilting her head. But some speeches lose their audience when the truth comes out. She raised her glass. Here's to accuracy and accountability. Ethan's smile faltered. Nearby, a hush rippled as murmurs spread. People glanced toward him, toward Zoe. A wall of unease pressed in. Suddenly, a chime sounded from Ethan's tablet, resting on a nearby demo table. He reached for it, his expression dropping when he saw the incoming alert. Confidential. Wallace Innovations Audit. Immediate review required. He showed it to Ethan, voice trembling. Your offshore accounts, text. Ethan's jaw clenched. He turned to the crowd, voice rising over the quartet's music. I promise you, this is a misunderstanding. You'll have your chance to explain, Zoe said, voice carrying past the stunned silence. But right now, the board's already reviewing. Cheers. She lifted her glass. Ethan looked around, lost, as guests exchanged whispers and pulled out phones, some snapping photos of the alert on his tablet. The string quartet faltered, then launched into a nervous rendition of Spring in a minor key. Gloria Harper emerged from the ribbon section, eyes wide with alarm. She touched Ethan's arm. He recoiled. Zoe's lips curved in a small, bittersweet smile. Amid the cascading silence, Zoe slipped out of the atrium doors into the night air. She paused under the menorah-lit archway of the lakeshore entrance, letting the cool breeze wash away adrenaline. Her phone buzzed, a single message from Marcus. They've frozen his accounts. Audit committee takes over. Tomorrow's headline is ours. Zoe exhaled, shoulders relaxing for the first time all evening. She texted Harper, mission accomplished. Let's go home. Stepping off the red carpet, she melted into the night, leaving behind the shattered illusion of Ethan Wallace's empire and walking into the dawn of her own. The morning after the gala's dramatic collapse felt surreal. Zoe Carter woke in Harper Brooks's Logan Square brownstone to distant church bells chiming through the pale spring light. Her phone lay on the nightstand, buzzing incessantly with news alerts. Wallace Innovations Audit Committee takes control. Ethan Wallace removed as director. Offshore accounts frozen. She slid out of bed, heart still racing from the previous night's fallout. Downstairs, Harper was already pouring coffee, her expression a careful mixture of pride and exhaustion. Congratulations, warrior, she said quietly, handing Zoe a steaming mug. Lily's laughter echoed from the playpen in the corner as Harper's toddler twin nephews tumbled around. Zoe sipped, gazing around the safe haven she'd found. In just 24 hours, her life had irreversibly changed. Ethan's empire lay unraveling. The board had convened an emergency meeting, and the press had tasted blood. Yet Zoe felt no triumph in another's downfall, only relief that Lily would be protected. Later that day, Zoe returned to her Lincoln Park condominium for the first time in weeks, heart pounding as she turned the key in the lock. Inside, boxes still littered the living room, remnants of a life she'd nearly abandoned. She paused in the doorway when she heard soft sobbing. Gloria Harper, her former mother-in-law, sat on the edge of cane, the cashmere chaise lounge Zoe had bought the year before, her floral scarf wrapped tight around her shoulders. She looked years older, grief and regret lines etched deeply. When Gloria saw Zoe, she flinched but did not rise. Tears pooled in her eyes. I came as soon as I could, she stammered. I saw everything, the audit alerts, the headlines. I'm so sorry for doubting you, for supporting him. Zoe closed the door behind her and approached quietly. Lily played with blocks at Zoe's feet, unaware of the storm. Zoe knelt, gathering Lily into her arms, then stood, smoothing the child's hair. She looked back at Gloria. Thank you for coming, Zoe said softly. She drew a careful breath. What do you want now? Gloria wiped a tear. I want to see my granddaughter, she whispered. I want to help, if you'll let me. Zoe weighed the sincerity in Gloria's voice. The woman had once turned her away, but Lily deserved a grandmother. Zoe exhaled. You may visit Lily, but understand this. Our family is different now. She's a Carter, and I'll protect her above all else. Gloria nodded, relief and shame mingling on her face. Just then, a timid knock echoed through the living room. Zoe opened the door to find Ethan, shoulders hunched, eyes rimmed red. He swallowed before speaking. Zoe, can we talk? She stepped aside. He followed her to the kitchen, avoiding Lily's curious gaze. Zoe busied herself with pouring water into Ethan's coffee mug, buying time for the words she needed. I won't make this hard, he began. I was wrong, so wrong. I lost sight of what mattered. You and Lily. Zoe watched him measured. You almost cost us everything, she said. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Ethan ran a hand through his hair. I'm sorry for abandoning Lily at the hospital for my affair.
For the audit scandal.
I've been fired. Gloria's ashamed. The board will pursue legal action. I have nothing left. He paused, voice cracking. If you ever need help, child support, babysitting, whatever, I'll do it. I want a chance to be a father again. Zoe placed Lily's building blocks onto the coffee table and folded her arms. The man in front of her was broken and humiliated, but trust, once shattered, is hard to reforge. I'm glad you recognize your failures, she said carefully. But I won't let you hurt Lily again. She slid a legal document across the counter, the finalized divorce decree, awarding Zoe sole physical custody, Ethan joint legal custody only, and settlement terms. Sign here, to finalize everything, Zoe instructed. Ethan's hand trembled as he signed. He stared at the paper as if seeing his own name for the last time. Then he picked up the mug Zoe had filled. Thank you, he whispered, for everything. That evening, Zoe found herself walking along the Chicago Riverwalk. Lily giggled in her stroller, bundled against a cool breeze. Ever since the divorce was final, Zoe felt both vulnerable and unburdened. She knew her next decision would define her future and Lily's. Ahead, Marcus Reed strolled toward her, Milo cycling by his side on a balance bike. Zoe smiled as she spotted them. Marcus wore a casual blazer and a gentle expression that steadied her heart. They met under a lamppost, city lights dancing on the water's surface. Marcus lifted his son off the bike, setting him on his feet. Milo raced toward Lily, shrieking with delight. Zoe watched the children tumble in happy chaos, then turned to Marcus. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything you've done for the custody, the audit, being there." Marcus tucked a stray lock of hair behind his ear. "You did all the hard work," he replied. "I just cleared the path." She inhaled the crisp air. "I owe you more than I can say." He took her hand. "Zoe, Lily toddled over, tugging Zoe's skirt. Zoe knelt, scooping her daughter into her arms. She held Lily close, the child's cheeks soft against hers. "I love you," Zoe whispered into Lily's hair. "So much." Marcus watched, admiration and longing in his eyes. When Lily squealed and reached for Milo, Zoe laughed, a clear, joyous sound that surprised her. Marcus knelt beside Lily, pulling out a small toy robot from his pocket. "Hello, Engineer Carter," he said in a playful voice. Lily's eyes lit up as she reached for the toy. Zoe met Marcus's gaze. No need for words. She saw in his gentle devotion the partner she'd craved, someone who would share responsibilities without abandoning them, who'd stand as a father figure whether or not he'd sired Lily by biology. That weekend, Zoe hosted a small gathering on Harper's rooftop, pizza from Giordano's, cold lemonade, and an impromptu playlist of vintage Motown hits. Harper, Milo, and Lily danced under the fairy lights strung between planters. Marcus and Zoe stood by the grill, tongs in hand. Gloria and Milo's mother, Sophie, chatted near the railing, comparing notes on baby-proofing. In a corner, Ethan helped a nervous technician retrieve final audit paperwork, his presence awkward but earnest. Zoe watched him, detachment softening her stern resolve. He was no longer husband, but Lily's father in name only. Marcus handed Zoe a plate. "Your turn to take a break," he said, brushing a stray hair from her face. Zoe smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. She joined the dancing children, lifting Lily in her arms. Marcus slid beside her, slipping an arm around her shoulders. The trio swayed as Ain't No Mountain High Enough kicked in, laughter blending with the city's ambient hum. Later, after the children had been tucked into beds, Zoe and Marcus retreated to Harper's rooftop patio. A cool breeze drifted across Lake Michigan in the distance. Zoe wrapped her arms around herself. "I never thought I'd have this, a life built from the ashes." Marcus nodded, taking her hand. "You earned it." He paused, eyes searching hers. "Zoe Carter, would you consider building something new with me?" She blinked, heart fluttering. The offer was unspoken but clear, a partnership grounded in respect, shared dreams, and unwavering support. Zoe closed her eyes, recalling the months of fear, betrayal, and courtroom battles. She thought of Lily's smile, Harper's friendship, Marcus's steadfastness. When she opened her eyes, they glowed. She squeezed his hand. "Yes," she whispered. Beneath the Chicago skyline, two broken hearts found renewal. A mother reclaimed her power, and together with a steadfast friend, she embarked on a new chapter. There would be challenges, parental committees, toddler tantrums, and the occasional audit fallout, but for the first time, Zoe looked forward, knowing she would never face them alone. As the city lights twinkled around them, Zoe held Marcus close, Lily's soft breathing warm against her side. In that moment of rebirth, hope and love entwined, and the next chapter of their lives began, brighter, stronger, and truly their own. Spring in Chicago awakened with a gentle warmth, as if the city itself was ready to turn the page. Zoe Carter found herself standing on her condo balcony one Saturday morning. cradling a mug of Earl Grey tea and listening to the hum of life below, joggers pacing Lakeshore Drive, street vendors setting up their carts, the distant clatter of L trains. In the weeks since finalizing her divorce and sealing her partnership with Marcus Reed, every sunrise felt like a promise. Below, Lily, now 3 years old, toddled along the sidewalk, her pigtails bouncing. Harper Brooks had agreed to babysit while Zoe met a potential new client for her expanding freelance accounting practice. Zoe waved to her daughter and Harper, her two most steadfast allies, and turned back inside to prepare for the day. Zoe's home office, once a dusty corner with half-packed boxes, had transformed into a sleek, functional workspace. Natural light streamed through the south-facing window, illuminating a streamlined desk, dual monitors, and framed certifications on the wall. A fresh bouquet of tulips from the farmer's market stood in a glass vase. She dialed into a video conference with the CEO of Greenwave Logistics, a mid-sized freight company looking to streamline their rosters and implement an automated payroll system. Her confidence radiated through the screen as she explained how her custom QuickBooks implementation and month-end reconciliation routines could reduce discrepancies by 30%. Your current error rate is 5% on average, Zoe advised, pointing to a shared slide. With our new controls, we'll target below 1%. I'll train your staff over a 4-week period, with detailed SOPs and bi-weekly check-ins. The CEO nodded, impressed. Within minutes, Zoe had secured a contract worth $25,000, half due up front. She ended the call, exhaling in satisfaction. As much as she loved being a mother, reclaiming her professional identity was deeply empowering. After lunch, Zoe's now signature salmon salad, she changed into jeans and a sweater before heading out. Marcus met her at the newly renovated playground off Fullerton Avenue, pushing Milo and Lily on sturdy swings. "Morning, Engineer Carter," Marcus greeted, using Lily's favorite nickname. He carried a picnic basket loaded with sandwiches from a local deli. The children shrieked with delight at the sight of the swings, and Zoe felt warmth bloom in her chest. They spent the next hour chasing the kids, pushing them higher, and watching Lily's cautious grin transform into full-blown laughter. Marcus caught Zoe's eye once, and she saw reflected pride. Not only in his son's carefree joy, but in the new family she and Marcus had become. After the playground, they laid out a blanket under a blossoming magnolia. Zoe unpacked sandwiches as Lily and Milo shared a bag of cheese crackers. Harper dropped by later with her twins. And the small group, friends turned chosen family, lucked on bright red checkered cloths, swapping stories and planning upcoming summer outings. The Lincoln Park Zoo, a day trip to the Art Institute, a 4th of July barbecue in Harper's backyard. On Tuesday evenings, Zoe volunteered at the Logan Square Business Improvement District's Women in Business mentorship program. She sat before a circle of ambitious young professionals, each nursing a latte from the local cafe. Zoe shared her story, balancing freelance work, single motherhood, and rebuilding trust, and offered practical accounting tips. "Remember, a budget is your best friend," she'd say, sliding a printed template across the table. "Forecast 3 months ahead. Track every penny, and don't forget to earmark funds for emergencies, like hospital stays." Her authenticity and expertise earned her sincere gratitude. As the session ended, an aspiring entrepreneur in her 20s approached Zoe for one-on-one coffee sessions. What began as goodwill blossomed into monthly retainer clients, further solidifying Zoe's standing in the community. One late afternoon, Zoe returned home to find an elegant envelope slipped beneath her front door welcome mat. The calligraphy on the envelope read, "Ms. Zoe Carter." Inside was an invitation to speak at the Women's Prosperity Summit, a prestigious annual conference downtown. Zoe's heart fluttered. Public speaking had once terrified her, but now, after standing in courtrooms, leading client presentations, she felt ready to share her message on a grander stage. She tucked the invitation into her planner, already drafting talking points, resilience, authenticity, and forging a life of purpose after adversity. On a bright Sunday morning, Zoe and Marcus stood at the altar of a small lakeside pavilion in Jackson Park. The breeze carried the scent of lilacs. Close friends and family, Harper, Gloria, Milo's mother Sophie, awaited with beaming smiles. A friend officiated the ceremony, focusing on unity rather than tradition. Zoe and Marcus, through storms of betrayal, legal battles, and personal rebirth, you have found a bond rooted in equity, respect, and love, the officiant intoned. Do you pledge to support, to uplift, and to honor one another always? Zoe looked at Marcus. His eyes ringed with emotion. She nodded and said, I do. He said the same. Their daughters, Lily and Milo, sprinkled rose petals as they sealed their vows with a gentle kiss. It wasn't a grand wedding, but it was perfect, a testament to the journey they'd endured and the bright future ahead. Back at their redecorated condo, walls freshly painted a soft dove gray, Zoe hung framed photos. Lily's first day of preschool, Zoe in court with Marcus, the lakeside ceremony. The living room shelves displayed Nate's childhood books and Milo's handmade birthday cards. Each morning, Zoe woke to a chorus of "Good morning, Mommy," her coffee maker whirred in the kitchen. Marcus kissed her cheek before slipping out for an early meeting. Zoe dropped Lily at Maple Leaf Montessori, then worked from her sunlit home office. By mid-afternoon, Marcus joined them with lunch from an artisan bakery, sharing tales of boardroom triumphs and new policy wins. Evenings unfolded with the cheerful routine of family dinners, Marcus grilling salmon on the balcony, Zoe preparing roasted vegetables, children coloring at a side table. After dinner, they read bedtime stories, Lily's current favorite, The Little Engine That Could, before tucking the kids in and retreating to their cozy nook for a glass of red wine and quiet conversation about hopes, challenges, and tomorrow's plans. With stability restored, Zoe looked outward. She established the Carter Family Foundation, a small nonprofit providing emergency childcare grants for single parents facing medical crises. Partnering with local hospitals and community centers, the foundation offered $500 stipends to cover daycare or sitter costs during hospital stays. Zoe drew from her own 401k match and enlisted Harper and Marcus on the advisory board. The first grant recipient was a nurse recovering from surgery, grateful tears in her eyes as Zoe handed her a check. Zoe felt the circle of compassion complete, what she once received miraculously. She now passed forward with purpose. On a crisp autumn afternoon, nearly 18 months since Lily's ER crisis, Zoe walked along the lakefront trail with Marcus and the children. Lily had just started kindergarten, her backpack bouncing, while Milo mastered his first bike without training wheels. Zoe observed the shifting leaves, bronze and gold swirling in the wind. Feeling the sweet ache of time's passage, Marcus slipped an arm around her waist. "We did it," he said softly. "We built something remarkable." Zoe leaned into him. "We did. And we'll keep building." Ahead lay conferences, business expansions, family vacations, new homes in the suburbs, perhaps even baby number 2. But right now, she reveled in this moment. A mother, a wife, a thriving entrepreneur guiding her daughter along the path of possibility. They stopped at a bench overlooking the water. Lily perched on Zoe's lap, chattering about her new teacher, while Milo leaned against Marcus, eyes bright with excitement for the upcoming fall carnival. Zoe looked at Marcus, the children's laughter swirling around them, and knew that life's greatest triumph lay not in wealth or accolades, but in the luminous bonds of chosen family and the indomitable spirit they'd forged together. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the lake in molten gold, Zoe allowed herself a full, unguarded smile. The trials of the past had carved her into someone stronger, someone capable of love, resilience, and boundless hope. And in this radiant new chapter, she would continue to write her story, one brilliant sunrise at a time. Zoe Carter stood on the terrace of her condo as the sun dipped below the Chicago skyline, painting Lake Michigan in molten gold. Lily's laughter drifted up from the playground below, where she chased autumn leaves with Milo and Harper's twins. Marcus Reed leaned into her, his warmth another layer against the crisp evening air. In that moment, Zoe felt the full weight and wonder of how far she had come. The journey had begun with a feverish night and broken promises, spiraled through betrayal and courtroom battles, and blossomed into a life she had once believed impossible. It was not a tale of fairy tale riches or effortless triumph, but a testament to resilience, truth, and the unexpected kindness that arises when we dare to rebuild ourselves from the fragments of our past. Zoe's eyes lingered on the children below, each of them a living reminder that love can flourish in the most unlikely soil. She traced the path of her own transformation. From the overwhelmed mother scrambling to save her daughter in an emergency room, to the betrayed spouse who found refuge in Harper's friendship, to the determined litigant confronting deceit in a courtroom, and finally to the confident entrepreneur and loving partner who stood here now. Her mind drifted to the papers she had signed, divorce decrees, custody orders, and asset division agreements that once felt like verdicts on her worth. Yet those documents had become the scaffolding on which she reconstructed her life. Every signature had been a step toward reclaiming her agency, every legal victory a shield for Lily's future. In trusting Marcus, first as a lawyer, then as a friend, and now as a partner, Zoe learned that true alliances are forged not in perfect harmony, but in steadfast support through the storm. The scars of betrayal still tingled at her memory. Ethan's absence during Lily's darkest hours, the stark glow of audit alerts exposing his greed, the silent ache of her mother's initial disapproval. But those wounds had also taught Zoe invaluable lessons, that self-respect demands action, that authenticity is stronger than pretense, and that forgiveness, for others or for oneself, is not an erasure of pain but a milestone of growth. In the soft illumination of dusk, Zoe turned to Marcus and smiled. "We've built something extraordinary," she said, voice steady. "Not because the road was easy, but because we chose to walk it together." He squeezed her hand, and every step was worth it. Below them, Lily paused in her play, looking up to wave. Zoe lifted her glass of chamomile mint tea, her nod to wellness and calm, and raised it in a gentle toast. "To truth," she whispered, "to courage, and to the family we choose." Marcus raised his glass beside hers, their reflections shimmering in the glass doors behind them. As night fell, the city lights flickered on, each one a tiny beacon of possibility. Zoe thought of the newly minted Carter Family Foundation, quietly empowering single parents in crisis. She thought of her growing roster of clients, women and men who had come to her for clarity and found not just an accountant, but a mentor who truly understood sacrifice. She thought of the Women's Prosperity Summit, where soon she would stand not as a victim, but as a voice of inspiration. But most of all, she thought of Lily, safe, loved, and certain that her mother would move mountains if needed. Zoe realized that legacy was not measured in assets or accolades, but in the unshakable knowledge that someone would always stand by you. That, above all else, formed the truest inheritance. A soft breeze rustled the curtains, and Marcus drew Zoe close, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The moment held a sacred stillness, the hush before life's next adventure. In that quiet space, Zoe understood the final lesson of her story, that no matter how fierce the tempest, the human spirit has an inexhaustible capacity to rise again, to rebuild with heart and integrity, and to guide others toward the same dawn. The world below hummed with possibility, streetcars clattering, laughter mingling with distant jazz notes, the glow of storefronts beckoning late-night wanderers. Zoe breathed deeply, feeling the pulse of the city intertwine with her own. She stepped back from the railing, hand in Marcus's, ready to re-enter the life they had forged. Because this was not just an ending, but the prologue to a future filled with promise. A life where setbacks were lessons, where alliances were chosen wisely, and where love, steadfast, honest, and compassionate, paved the path forward. And in that enduring truth, Zoe Carter discovered her greatest triumph, the unbreakable joy of a heart fully alive. And that brings us to the end of today's story on TrueStory vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.